Hi gamers, we are finally back with a gaming episode. Sorry to keep you waiting for so long, but there's been so much going on in the world of life and gaming and technology sphere that it's hard to keep up as a part-timer. Today we're going to talk about games we have been playing or tried a little bit or finished or just everything across the board. So Adam, let's get into it. What's first on your list?
All right. Well, I have been playing Windbound for a while, and I've been wanting to talk about it, but we haven't really had the opportunity to talk about it because we haven't really done a game episode in a long time. So anyway, Windbound is done by Five Live Studios. Excuse me. They are both the developer and the publisher. So this is kind of a release. Or sorry, the publisher is Deep Silver. My other game has the same developer and publisher, but publisher is Deep Silver. Developer is Five Live Studios. It was released in August 28th, 2020, and it is available on PC, PS4, or the PS5, Xbox One, or the XS, and the Switch. So basically, anywhere you want to play this game, you're going to be able to play this game. So anyway, the premise of the game is that you are a girl named Kira, and you're part of this, I guess, a tribe that is known for sailing. So they're kind of like a Polynesian or a Hawaiian type tribe where they live on islands and they sail around quite a bit. And there's this big attack on you by this giant Nautilus monster, and you're knocked off your ship. And you kind of wake up on this island, and now you need to find a way back to your people. And to do this, you need to unlock certain towers, which are going to unlock a larger tower that'll take you into these places called I believe they're called the passings. And these are kind of like these interdimensional warp kind of things. But then you go through those, and then you go into the next level, and they're all randomly generated. And you can either play this game as a roguelike, where if you die, you go back to the beginning, and the only thing you have is your inventory that is in your hands. So you actually have like a held slot where you can store things, but you can also have a bag. But the things in your hands are the only things that you can keep with you if you die. Or you can do the easier mode, which will only reset you to the beginning of that particular level, and it will allow you to keep everything, not just what's in your inventory, but also your boat. So it is a survival game. You have elements such as hunger, so you need to eat consistently, and there are little monsters to fight. And overall, I've just really enjoyed it. It's kind of a relaxing game. I've played other survival games, and they kind of stressed me out of it. They're kind of hard. Have you ever played Don't Starve?
I've tried it, and I think just the same thing is. I remember when I played the Don't Starve, I was like, okay, cool. I like the aesthetic, and going. I think after 20 minutes, and I died already. I'm like, nope, no, thank you.
Yeah, so I liked the idea, but it was just way too hard for me. And I know if you play it multiple times, you can kind of get better at it and whatnot. But this one's actually much easier and much lighter in that regard. So it's not really too much of a challenge at all. And so yeah, I just really enjoyed it. And there are some issues that I do have with it. Now, when it first came out, it was just kind of the base game, and it was really simple. And basically, you could just build your canoes or build your boats, and then you could sail along, unlock these towers, go to the end, and that was basically it. Well, there wasn't that much to the game. And the first two DLCs didn't really add that much in terms of gameplay. They did add some slightly different puzzles to the towers. So normally the tower, you just climb it and you activate a thing at the top. But they added things such as if there's a gong on some towers, and you have to hit the gong, and the gong will like raise or lower platforms, and you have to hit those. Sometimes the gong will be missing, so you'll get kind of a map with an X on it, and you have to sail to where the buried treasure is and dig up the gong and then come back. Or sometimes there might be a certain animal that you have to fight, like a spirit version of it, so like a boar or a planestalker, which is kind of like a mountain lion kind of thing. So you have to fight a certain monster to get its token and then unlock it that way. Certain ones are kind of a gliding puzzle where you have to jump and kind of glide across, so you can build a glider and that sort of thing. So the first two DLCs added those sort of elements, and they didn't really change the game that much, but they made it very interesting. They made it more interesting. But the third DLC actually completely changed the game, because what it used to be was just activate the towers, get to the end, and then you move on to the next level. Now there's, starting with level, I believe, 2. So there's technically 5 different crossings or 5 different levels. And with the crossings, now there's a boss fight at the end of each one. Okay, so we got the question here. I am watching the video where you are boss fighting. Why did you go back to the main menu and then go back to the boss fight? Okay, so that's a really great question. I had actually gone through the game before, and the first times I played it the legitimate way. But the thing is if you die, you reset the level. And so because of the boss fight, if I had just continued on, I would have had to redo the entire level. And at that point, I had already been through it so many times, and progress was going so slow. I was just like, you know what? I'll just exit out and then reload it, and then I'll be right at the boss again. I don't have
Oh,
to
cool.
redo
That
the
saves
entire
time.
level. Yeah, so there are a lot of little hints and things like that I've looked online, and not too many people are playing. So there aren't too many little cheats and hints and stuff like that, but there are a few that I've discovered myself. So that's one of them, is that you can just kind of come in with the boss, and you can exit out, come back, and then you don't have to redo the entire level. That's a big one. The other thing is they added kind of these ghost things with the newest DLC, and it makes things a lot harder because they're a lot more aggressive than most animals are. So they'll chase you around, and then not only that, but every time they hit you, they give you something called loathing, which works kind of like rads in Fallout 4, where it's basically just a little bar that moves down from the top of your life bar, and your life cannot heal beyond that point until you get rid of the loathing. And the way you would do that is you would have to kill these guys. You get they drop like a spectral residue, and you use that with some other things to make a potion that'll get rid of your loathing. But if you save the game, exit out, load back in, your loathing's gone.
Oh, nice.
So that's a great way to get rid of it for free. That's a nice little cheat there. And so, by the end of the game, I was definitely kind of cheating a little bit because I have played it 5 or 6 times through at this point, and I was trying to get the trophy hunting, and ultimately I've given up on that. And the reason that I've given up on trophy hunting is because there are a lot of glitches in the game that make it almost impossible. For instance, I played through and I got my vegetarian and my carnivore trophies, which are, vegetarian is you don't eat meat, and carnivore is you only eat meat. So I did those, and I was trying to do the one where you only use melee, and then I tried to do the one where you can only use ranged. And there seem to be a lot of glitchy things in there. Like, for example, there's one ability that gives you a bleed effect on your weapons. If you use the bleed effect, it doesn't seem to work. So
Okay.
you need to do it with pure raw damage. But beyond that, I'm also not sure, because you can get these figureheads on the front of your ship. And one of them they shoot out these kind of little lightning bolts that will, shock. Like if a shark gets too close to you, it'll shock it. And occasionally, if a fish swims too close to you, it'll zap a fish. So I don't know if that, was like, oh, okay, now you can't get this trophy anymore. But I've heard people that actually went through the game and didn't attack anything, did 0 damage to anything prior to this DLC, and they also could not get the trophy to pop. So apparently what you have to do is you have to delete all your saves and start over from the very beginning. Because as long as you have a save, so for instance, it says complete the game, while only using melee weapons. So if you have any save in which you've used a ranged weapon, it will not pop. So you have to delete all your saves and start from the beginning. And that I would actually do it, except for the latest DLC where they add the boss fights and they add the haunted islands and stuff like that, because it just slows down progress so much. Because before, what people were doing is they would just build a grass canoe and then just beeline it to the towers and then beeline it out, and they could beat the whole game in about 3 hours. They were speedrunning it. But with the boss fights, that's just not really doable anymore. It just slows it down considerably. So because of that, I've decided maybe I'm just going to let this one go, which is unfortunate. And then the other one is you have to kill every land-based animal with a knife.
Oh, wow.
And I killed the first one with the knife, and it took a while. and there's this one giant kind of like sandworm thing, and I'm like, no, I've heard people where they're saying like, oh yeah, it took me an hour and I had to use 17 healing potions to finish it off, and it's just like, oh no, that's just too tedious. I'm sorry. So some of these, so because it's kind of glitchy in terms of how to get the trophies and that sort of thing, I eventually just said, you know what, I'm just gonna have to suck it up and not platinum this one. But I really did enjoy the game, and I would highly recommend it for anybody that enjoys, say, something like Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, because it does have kind of those sailing mechanics, tacking into the wind and that sort of thing. And the music's really good. It kind of reminds me of some of the Studio Ghibli music, and kind of like their
Okay.
piano music. So it is kind of relaxing, especially when you're just kind of sailing along. And they actually do have a free sailing mode where you can, it's kind of like Minecraft creative mode, where you can just put whatever stuff on the boat as much as you want, build a giant boat or a tiny boat, and just sail around, and that's all you do.
Oh no, that's nice.
Yeah, so if you just want to, relax for 5 minutes or something and sail around, you can do that. I tried it. Basically, I used it to test boat shapes, because the bigger your boat is, the harder it is to control. And so I was using it to kind of experiment with different sizes and shapes of boats to figure out, what was the best one for me in terms of I can still get my speed out of it, but it's still maneuverable, and it's not so wide that I can't get in between rocks and stuff like that. So that's how I kind of came across my optimum design. So,
Okay.
all right, so I'm timing myself this time. So yeah, now we're up to questions.
So I mean, you've talked about this game. I think you've talked about it twice already.
I've mentioned it, yeah, but I haven't really gone into detail.
Because I remember we did like a preview of upcoming games, and Windbound was on there.
Yes,
And
yeah,
then
I talked about how I wanted to play it.
when you were playing it, I think we did another one, right?
I talked about it a little bit. I don't think I went into so much detail on it. And plus, that would have been pre the final DLC. The first 2 DLC, the first one was a Halloween kind of themed one. So on certain islands, you'll find a pumpkin. And if you get the pumpkin, it'll give you a piece of witch gear. There's 3 pieces. One of them is like a piece of body armor, basically, that makes you look like a witch. But if you die, you come back 1 time. So you basically get 2 lives.
Oh, okay.
The second one is a witch's hat, which if you're wearing that and you use a potion, the potion will last longer. And the third one is a witch's broom, which is a spear, so it's considered a melee weapon. But it's got these little 3 orbs, and when you stab with it, the 3 orbs will fly out and attack something. And in my first playthrough, that was my primary weapon, because it'll one-shot the really small enemies. And the small enemies are really hard to hit sometimes because they move around quite a bit, and they're kind of like, they're not really consistent in their movements.
Sure.
So that one was a huge boon. And then the second DLC, along with the puzzles, I think it might have added the glider as well, I'm not sure, but it also added 3 pieces of gear. One is a stealth suit that if you can kind of do like a crouch mode, and then animals won't sense you as easily, so you can sneak up on them. That one, if you do that, you go invisible, but at the cost of stamina. It's got a hat that you can wear, or a hood, and the hood will make it that when you dodge, you kind of do this teleport dodge, and it's faster than a regular dodge. And then the third thing you can get is a bow that when you fire the bow, it'll shoot an extra 2 magic arrows after the first one, so it effectively shoots 3 arrows. So they added that gear into the game, along with some other stuff. And then in the third DLC, along with the ghosts, they didn't add any new... Oh, they did. They added some masks that you can make. So you can make some masks that'll give you some... And then they added a few abilities, so you can do like... when you dodge, you can do a counterattack after the dodge. And you can do kind of a charge attack, and you can do a parry, which you couldn't previously do. So those are specifically designed to deal with the ghosts, but pretty much I just used the dodge attack. That was the most effective one.
So contrasting, your expectations and the end result of Windbound, how do you feel?
It pretty much met my expectations. It was pretty much what I expected it to be. The third DLC, like I said, changed the game quite a bit. I would like an option, and I've seen a lot of people online that kind of wish there was an option to turn the third DLC off, to get rid of that, because it does kind of take away from the relaxing nature of it and makes it a little more intense.
Okay.
I also saw a parent complaining because they didn't want their child playing games that had humanoid enemies. You know, if it
Oh.
was like an animal or something like that, it's fine, or a robot, it's fine. But if it looks like a person, they didn't really want their kid, you know, shooting arrows at a person.
Yes.
And because these ghosts are kind of vaguely humanoid, they weren't too happy with that. I mean, that was a very specific complaint, but yeah, in terms of the original base game, yeah, it was basically exactly what I was thinking of. There were a few things that were different. I think I was expecting a little more in terms of. I was kind of expecting it that it was one continuous procedurally generated archipelago, and you kind of just had to work your way through it and then just kind of get from point A to point B. But instead, what it is it's a map, and then you kind of sail around that map, and then you go into the final area, and then you go into the crossing where you kind of go through, and then you go into a new map. So that was a little bit different. It's not quite as big as I thought it was going to be. But other than that, yeah, it's pretty much what I expected. The story is very minimalist. In the base game, it's almost no story. It's basically you get anecdotes from time to time. Whenever you get a tower, it'll give you a little anecdote. And then when you enter the crossing, it'll have a big mural that'll kind of tell the story of what's going on. But nobody ever expressly tells you the story of what's going on. And basically all you know is that these people used to worship the Nautilus, and things went well, and then for some reason they turned against the Nautilus and started killing them. And then the Nautilus got mad, and there was kind of this war between the gods and the humans. And that's what happens at the beginning is, you know, you're sailing along and this Nautilus shows up and it basically just sinks your entire fleet. In the latest DLC, the ghosts are the people that turned against the Nautilus. So they do add a little bit of story every time you get into a boss fight, where they will have the boss will kind of tell you who they are and what their role in it was. So actually it does kind of round off the story in the final DLC. But yeah, in terms of what I was expecting, it pretty much was what I wanted. So I was very satisfied. And that's why I
Great.
played it 6 times or so.
I mean, do you regret playing it 6 times?
No, not at all. The only thing is, I wish that they hadn't had the trophies bugged, because since both trophies were bugged, I was, you know, unable to get some of the trophies, and I would play it more if I could get them. But you know, starting all over from the beginning and having to do some of those things, that's the only thing really I regret is, you know, the fact that. You know, you go through all that and then you don't get what you're looking for, and it's kind of disappointing. You know, because you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this, and I went through this challenge, and then you know you don't get the trophy to show for it. That was a little disappointing, but other than that, you know, playing it just normally and just playing how you want, not having to worry about I'm only going to eat meat, or I'm only going to eat plants, or I'm only going to use melee weapons, or I'm only going to use the basic weapons. If you don't do that, no, I completely enjoy it, and I enjoyed it every time I played.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's a very relaxing game, and like I said, it's not very long, so it's definitely kind of a good thing. You know, if my wife went up to take a shower, you know, I could get out and I could get on the boat, and I could sail around in the islands, and I could collect some supplies, and, you know, maybe hit up a tower or something like that. So, yeah.
Very, very good. Any last thoughts to mention about Windbound for people thinking about picking it up, or pick it up on a sale, or...
No, yeah, if you see it on sale, I would highly recommend it. Now, I would just say if you're the kind of person who doesn't really like survival games, then you might not enjoy it that much. And if you enjoy highly challenging games, it's not that challenging. But if you're looking for kind of a relaxing kind of zen game, yeah, it's pretty good. You know, just watch out for that 3rd DLC.
Okay, okay. So, I mean, is there a way to stop the DLC from downloading, or you just... I don't know how that works on PlayStation.
I don't think so. I think now, if you had a disc version of it, you could play just the disc version without downloading. But if you have the digital version, I don't think there's a way around it.
Okay. Because I know in Steam, in some games, you have the option to like deselect the DLCs.
Yeah, no. In this case, in this case, the DLCs are actually patches. They call them DLCs, but in reality, they're patches.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is Windbound. If you have any questions for Adam or any thoughts, or you still have things you want to know about Windbound, maybe you're stuck. Adam's played it 5 times. I'm sure he'd be able to drop a few hints or suggestions. Hit us up on Twitter or Gmail at middleaged gaming2020 at gmail.com, or gamingaged on Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. We're moving on to talk about Godfall, and Godfall I do not have a video because, I mean, I haven't been recording any videos since I just played it with my friend Hans. Okay,
No.
goodbye Windbound.
Don't you have your first video?
I did, and after I thought about it, I'm like, oh yeah, I could have just downloaded it from Facebook or YouTube, which keeps everything, as opposed to Twitch. But anyway, so I've talked about this, and I've done a few videos on Godfall on our YouTube channel, Middle Age Gaming. You can see it right there on Adam's overlay. So have a look at those. I'm not going to talk about anything that I've talked about before, but rather just say I finished it. Jeez, it must be 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now. I really enjoyed it on a scale of out of 10. I think my expectation before I started the game was like, man, this is going to be awesome. 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10. But it's probably dropped down to like a 7 out of 10. I would definitely say if you didn't pick it up before, the primal update for Godfall really made a big difference because you can buy weapons. They did a lot of quality of life stuff. And when I finished it, I think I put in, Hans and I, we put in about 20 hours or so for the story, and then after that there's the end game stuff where you get to do very much similar to Diablo and a bunch of other games where you get to go on raids, and as you get to go on raids, you get this special stuff which allows you to unlock loot and gear. So there definitely is an end game, and I mean, when you finish the game, you can still go back to every single level and play that again, and farm gear and farm loot and that sort of stuff. I mean, as I was saying, 7 out of 10 overall, just because I wish there was more weapon combos. The combos are pretty cool, but I mean, I ended up doing like just one combo all the time, or try to do it all the time because it just looks cool and flashy. The update as well, I would say if you're a PC gamer and you're running a lower end PC, they didn't really optimize the game more. So I was running at 4K medium, and it still looked fantastic, but I couldn't run it at 4K high. And yeah, any thoughts so far, Adam?
No, none so far.
Yeah, so that was pretty much.
Actually, how did you enjoy the story? Because I've heard different things. Some people say the story is great, and other people say like the story's like.
I think if you're expecting Game of Thrones level story, of course not. I mean, I don't like overly complex stories, but it was the typical sort of revenge story. I wrote spoilers on the show notes because I'm not going to spoil the story anyway, but it ends in a very typical way, which for me was fine. I still felt like after I defeated the boss, who is, if you see the picture on our stream, who is the brother of the character you play, and I'm like, oh man, brother, you suck, you dead. Okay, that was it. I'm like, okay, cool. I still felt good at the end of the game. And the boss fight, I will say one thing though, the last boss fight is like really fantastic. The guy has a lot of powers and does a lot of things, and it's really a fantastic game. I definitely recommend to pick it up. It's been on sale. I think it was on sale on the Epic Store, the spring sale, which I'm not sure if it's going on still or not, for like 75% discount. I think really fun single player, really fun multiplayer. I think you can play with up to 4 people, and I mean, contrasting my expectations and stuff. I mean, I thought I'd be like a sort of like a Warframe-esque, because you've got like 10 suits of armor you can get, and I got a few, and they're really not that different. The final power is the only thing that's different between all of them, and the game has replayability. I mean, definitely a lot of replayability, but I mean, if you're a middle-aged gamer, like I imagine some of you are, or most of you are, you're probably gonna play this one time, do your 20 hours, probably less if you play fast, and you'll be done.
Okay. 20 hours is, I don't know, to me that sounds really short.
Oh well, that was fantastically long for us. But
Oh, okay.
yes,
Is there a lot of side questing, or is it mostly just the primary quest?
there's not a lot of side questing. I mean, there's so in Godfall again. You go back to our original videos. I'll cover it very briefly here. Is usually to unlock a level, you have like a certain number of requirements, and when you finish a level, you can go back into that level and just sort of walk around, look for secrets, do additional goals, also like miniature quests and stuff. Uh, that's pretty much. But and sometimes I did that before when I was playing on my own. But no, no, no. A lot of the quests are just basically they're very linear. You move through all the realms of water, air, and earth, and you get to the final realm where you fight your brother. So it's linear. But I mean, there's then an open world nature for people who want to get better loot, better gear, crafting components, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, loot's a really big thing nowadays. That kind of Diablo-esque going through and grinding for loot. That's really popular nowadays.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I did want to mention, the weapons and stuff, like I stuck with a very similar combo of a longsword and a hammer, and I wish there would be like greater weapon variety and stuff, and that was kind of disappointing because I tried different weapons and all of them like didn't feel as good as the longsword and the hammer combo, and I think that's something I wish they would have changed as well. If they make a Godfall 2, and I hope they do, they make it more in the Warframe variety, in the sense that in Warframe you have so many good weapon combos, so many good things to do, and every set of armor feels so absolutely unique with different powers and stuff. And this feels like a great demo of the PS5 or a great demo of a 4K PC if you have one, because it just looks fantastic, but nothing more than that. Yeah.
Another one of those games. So kind of like what Rise was for the Xbox One.
Oh yes, yes, yes. Rise, a Son of Rome, right?
Yeah, where it looks really pretty, but it's not really a deep game, but it shows off the power of the system.
Exactly. All right. So what are we going on to next? Haven or Freefire?
I'm gonna go to Haven. I'm gonna say Freefire for last if we get to it. Okay. So
Okay.
anyway, next is Haven. It's developed by the Game Bakers, and it's also published by the Game Bakers. It was released originally on December 3rd, 2020 for the PC, the PS5, and the Xbox One X and S. And then later on February 4th, 2021 for the PS4 and the Switch. So, yeah, I don't know why it released on the PS4 later. I'm not quite sure, but whatever. And I'm not sure if maybe my information is backwards or something like that, but I definitely had it on the PS4 first and then later on moved it over to the PS5 version. So Haven is a game about two characters named Yu and Kay, and they are part of this kind of dystopian society where, it's very scientifically oriented, but people are basically controlled by this person called the matchmaker, who will choose your mate for life and that sort of thing. And basically society runs around this. Well, Yu and Kay are two star-crossed lovers, and they're teenagers basically, and they decide, well, we don't want to be put with our potential matches, we want to be with each other. And they take a spaceship and fly away to a planet that Kay knew about and that had been kind of glossed over, that nobody really knew about, and they go there and basically decide to make a life for themselves. And while they're there, they discover that actually the apiary, the kind of government that they used to belong to, had previously been to this planet, did something really bad, and then abandoned it. So now they're on this planet and they're trying to figure out what happened to it, and at the same time they're trying to hope that the apiary does not follow them there, which of course does not work out. So I'm at a point in the game where basically they've been discovered, and now the apiary is coming for them. But yeah, it started off when I first started playing this game. I noted the soundtrack. It's got this kind of like, groovy techno soundtrack kind of thing going on. Apparently, they did like an online concert for it as
Oh,
well.
wow.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. But they did that for it, and it kind of has that cell shaded aesthetic. It's actually a relatively simple game, especially starting off. And I think that's actually one of the things that kind of turned me off early on. If you watch my early playthrough, I kind of wasn't that into it, and then I got into it later because I feel like it did kind of start off in a lot of ways kind
Why
of
did you get
slow.
into it later?
I think I just kind of got attached to the characters a little bit more.
Okay.
This is pretty typical with me, though, where I'll start off with a game and I don't really like it, and then I end up liking it a lot more later. The same thing happened to me with Final Fantasy Type Zero, where I started off and I'm like, I don't really like this game. These characters are, they're all one-dimensional. Everything is super, the dialogue is really cliche and all that. And then later on, they kind of grew on me.
So it's the
Um,
story that sort of brought you into Haven.
Kind of, yeah. The mystery of what's going on behind, because you can tell that there's something behind the scenes, but they aren't really talking about it early on. And there were a lot of little quality of life things too. Like early on, you're exploring this planet, but you go from zone to zone, but it's really hard to navigate. And then after a while, they find a little compass map thing. So then you get a map, and then it's like, oh, now traversing this planet is way easier. So it's like a small quality of life improvement. And then later on, you find these animals that you can ride, and they can kind of port you around the map, so you don't have to, run the whole way. And it was just these small things where it's like, oh, these are small quality of life improvements. But if they had been there in the beginning, I think I would have enjoyed the beginning much more. But the fact that you get these things later, because at the beginning I was like, oh man, I wish they had this. And then later on, you do get that. So that sort of thing. The combat's kind of wonky. It's kind of hard to manage. You're controlling two characters at the same time, but the way you control them is by using either the face buttons or the D-pad. And so, one button will be defend, one button is kind of an energy attack, one button is a physical attack, and one button is used to pacify enemies after they're KO'd. And so you're kind of pressing these buttons for the characters simultaneously. And sometimes it can get a little bit confusing. And also there are things like if you activate an attack, then they don't do the attack immediately. Sometimes they have to do like a little animation, or they have to wait for the enemy to finish their animation. So sometimes I'll use an attack and the attack will be fully charged. They're waiting to use it. I go to hit the button to charge up the next attack, but it just resets the attack.
Oh no.
And yeah, and so that can be kind of annoying sometimes where you're like, no, I lost a lot of time on that and that sort of thing. And it's not terribly hard, but as you go through, they do things like now you can combine attacks, and now you can get items that allow you to attack multiple enemies simultaneously, and that sort of thing. And so they do kind of make it a little more interesting later on, but early on, it's very basic, and I think that's basically it. And also too, like early on, it's very, it's kind of what I haven't read Twilight, so I won't say it's like Twilight, but it feels like kind of the public perceptions of Twilight. It's this love story and everything's wonderful for this couple and blah blah blah. It's like this one gigantic extended honeymoon pyramid, and because of that, then it's kind of like, oh, I want to see these guys have some trouble, and then later on they do, and I think that's really when I started getting invested in the game, is when they start hitting some of the rocky points and then working through them. Because, they are just two people stuck on a planet. It's just the two of them. And, at first it's like, oh, this is wonderful. But then, things start to show up like, okay, the girl kind of misses her mom. Or, the guy, kind of talks about some of the stuff that he used to do, because he was a biologist. And he kind of misses some of the things at his old job and that sort of thing. And once they get to that part, I think that's when the story kind of gets interesting for me, is seeing them work through that. So the question here is there a difference between the PS4 and the PS5 version? Not too much. What was really strange for me, I don't think I ever played this on the PS4. I think I always played it on the PS5. But I was originally playing the PS4 version on the PS5, and then later on I was playing the PS5 version, which is why when I was looking at the release dates, I was kind of confused, because I was like, I don't... But then again, I don't know, maybe it's just here in Asia, the PS5 version released later. I'm not sure. But the one thing I did notice was the PS5 version is actually smaller than the PS4 version in terms of the save files. It is cell shaded, so I don't think there are higher textures or anything like that that they had to worry about. So I don't think that really made a big difference. I think the only real difference is maybe slightly faster loading times. Other than that, I don't think there's too big of a difference.
Does it control better? I mean, does it make use of the PS5 controller, or does it make use of any PS5 specific features?
The only specific features on the PS5 controller that the PS4 doesn't have is the haptic feedback, and it doesn't really use that. So, and yeah, honestly, they don't really need to. The only thing that the controllers, because the haptic feedback is only in the R2 and L2 buttons, and R2 and L2 are basically only really used in this game for, the sprint function. You're not actually sprinting, but when you're moving around the map, you hold down R2 and you kind of fly and glide along. I remember I was playing one time and you noted that they look kind of like fairies floating around.
Exactly.
So the R2 feature is, holding down R2 gives you that glide feature. So I don't really know what you would do with haptic feedback with that. I don't know, maybe give it kind of a rumble or something. But no, it doesn't make use of that. I think it's purely just more efficient use of the SSD and allowing it to load faster. Which it didn't take that long to load anyway, so I don't really know why there needed to be two versions, or maybe it's for 4K.
Maybe.
So maybe the PS5 version is 4K, whereas the PS4 version is not. That's probably the only two things, are the SSD and the 4K. That's probably the only difference.
I'm watching the video here because you're fighting looks like some sort of Robotech robot or some kind of Gundam. And
the Stingers, yes.
So from what I'm seeing, there's not a great variety in combat. Is that what you felt? Like, it seems like you're doing this same set of moves, just like I complained about Godfall a few minutes ago.
Yeah, like I said, there's an energy attack, there's physical attack, there's pacify, and there's defend, and that's it.
And so that doesn't change throughout the entire game?
No, you never have more than that. But part of what makes the combat less tedious is the fact that different enemies will react differently, and so you kind of have to learn the enemy's patterns and act appropriately. For instance, there are these little bug enemies that are not they're kind of immune to the energy attacks. They take less damage from them, so you have to use physical attacks against those guys. There's lizards that you can kind of use both, but the energy attacks seem to work a little bit better. There are enemies where they will always become dizzy after an attack. So you need to wait for them to attack first and then, attack them while they're dizzy to do extra damage. There's other ones that will only become dizzy if they attack somebody who's defending. So you need to have one person up with the shield ready, and then when they attack that person, then they'll kind of become dizzy, and then you can attack them. So there's a little bit of strategy in there and figuring out the timing, and that does make some things kind of difficult, because, like, for example, you can do a combo attack, and some enemies, if they're dizzy, they'll only be dizzy for a short period of time, and the amount of time it takes to charge a combo attack will not work on them, so you have to use the smaller attacks. So the variety is actually in how you address different enemies, not in what you have in terms of your ability to attack. So it's not terribly deep, and it does get it is simple, but it keeps it from being completely just mind-numbing face roll. So, and with the robots, they were particularly difficult because they had some certain things where if I remember correctly, there were, or maybe I don't know if it's these ones or some ones I faced later, but they actually had some kind of shield where you couldn't attack them at certain times, so you had to get them out of the shield and then attack them directly. And it was so yeah, the biggest part is there aren't that many enemies you face, and there's a set amount in each zone, so once you clear the zone, you'll never have to fight anything in that zone again. And so because of that, I think that makes it that it doesn't become super tedious, because you're not constantly fighting the same enemies over and over again. There's actually a limited number of them, and you can kind of engage them when you want. So most of it's figuring out, how do I deal with this particular encounter.
Do you want to explain how that little map that's on the screen now works? Because I've seen it a few times, and it sort of reminds me of a dungeon crawling system where you go into you go up, and then there's an encounter, and you go to this room, there's another encounter. Are these the zones that you're talking about? Is what these like diamond things are?
Yeah, so each diamond is a zone. Each line tells you that you can, each line basically tells you that you can leave this zone to go to the next zone. So it tells you how they connect. If the zone is
Ah.
white, it's cleared. There's nothing in there. If the zone is pink, that means that there is still what this thing is called rust, and there's still some rust in the level,
What
and
is
you want to
rust?
clear out. Rust is so in this game. There's this energy source called flow, and flow is basically what connects all the planets to each other, and you can use flow bridges, kind of like wormholes, to travel from point A to point B. And they're these short little flow threads around the planet, and you can use them to charge up your boots, and then you can use kind of a flow burst to solve certain puzzles. Like sometimes you'll come across old buildings, and if you use a flow burst near the door, it'll activate the door, and you can go inside and collect things inside the building. So rust is basically when flow becomes super condensed into its solid form. That's rust, and it's a corruption of flow.
Oh, okay.
And so and that's part of the mystery is that they've never seen it on any other planet. They've only seen it on this planet, so they know that something that happened here, probably something the apiary did, caused this rust to show up. And so what they're doing is but if your rust comes into contact with flow, it dissipates back into regular flow. And so what you do is as you go through a level, there will be concentrations of rust on the ground. If you fly over them, it'll basically clear them out, and then you can clear out areas on the map, and then it'll also corrupt the animals in the area. So that's what the fights are, fighting these animals that have been corrupted by rust. And that's why you pacify them. You don't kill them. Once you've knocked them out, you can cleanse them of the rust, and then they go back to their normal forms and they wander off and whatever.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so then that's how you can collect rust, and then you can use rust to create items that you can assist you in combat and that sort of thing. So the pink areas are the areas that still have rust to be collected, and the white areas are areas that are clear where you can just move through them and you don't have to worry about being attacked by anything or anything like that. So
Okay.
yeah.
What's the price point of this? I mean, at the moment, or I mean, what did you purchase it at? And did you purchase it, or was it like a PS Plus thing?
I purchased it. I think it was on a discount when I did, though. Let me check. Because I had actually had my eye on this for a while. And the reason that I had my eye on this for a while is because when I originally saw it, the aesthetic reminded me a lot of Gravity Rush. And I really, really loved Gravity Rush. That's a great game.
What is Gravity Rush?
Gravity Rush is a game that originally was released on the PlayStation Vita, and then later on the HD version was released on the PS4, and then they released Gravity Rush 2 on the PS4 as well. And in that game, you're a girl named Kat who can manipulate gravity.
Oh, okay.
And so so you can fly, but you don't actually fly, you fall. So what you would do is you would switch gravity into up, and then you fall into the sky, and then you switch gravity sideways, and then you fall sideways, and that's how you fly around. Great game. I would highly recommend Gravity Rush. One of the best games I've played. This one, the aesthetic was very, very similar to Gravity Rush. Everything from the cell shadedness to it, to the way the characters talk when they pop up and they have their little, the little characters there on the side. In Gravity Rush, you would have, they did kind of like a comic book style thing. And so because of that, that just immediately grabbed my attention. And so then, I read about it, and it's like, oh, this game, you're a couple, you're stranded on this planet. And I was like, oh man, this sounds fun. I really want to try this out. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I got on my radar. And after that, I saw it on sale one time, and I was like, all right, I'm going to pick this up. So let's see, Haven. Let's see, there's the Chinese version. Oh no, there's Chinese and English version. Chinese, Japanese, English version. It's not opening. Oh, here it goes. Ugh. Hang on, it wants to know my birthday. I don't know why.
All these things do.
I think because the thing is it's not a really an adult game. Where's the price? Can't find the price here. It's not listing the price. I don't know what it is. I don't think it's a full price game if I remember correctly. I think it's on the cheaper
I can
end.
check the Steam price. Hey,
Yeah, it should be on Steam, I think, too.
yes, it is. 378 Taiwan dollars, so that would be just about 12 or 13 US dollars.
Yeah, it's super cheap.
No,
So-
that would be less. It'd be like, yeah, 10, 11 or 12. Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah,
right.
give or take. So super cheap. But yeah, it just appeals to me. So I
Okay.
forgot what I was saying.
You're talking about,
Oh, the maturity of it. Yes.
yes.
So the game itself is not. It doesn't seem mature, but it has a lot of mature themes because this is a couple, and they are intimate, and so sometimes things come up about that.
Okay.
And so they'll talk about these sort of things, and they'll. One of the things that they were getting into was they were kind of bored, so they decided to play a little bit of a role-playing game, and so they're playing kind of like a D&D thing, and Kay is starting as the dungeon master. He's basically describing, like, oh, you're being tracked by all these soldiers, blah, blah, blah. And Yu's basically saying, I'm going to do this, and it starts off, it just seems like a typical D&D campaign kind of thing, like he gives her an option, and she says, I do this, and he's like, he tells her the next part of the story, and then she says, I do this, and then it takes kind of a really quick turn where he's like, oh, you pops out of a hatch in the ground, and he says, get in if you want to live, and they get down in there, and then suddenly it's like, you notice his rippling pecs and blah 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 blah. Like, oh well, then I'm gonna take off his shirt, and he says like, oh well, then he will take off yours as well, and it just starts getting like really hot and heavy really fast, and so it's got that sort of thing where, it looks like it's a game for kids, and then suddenly the content, you never see anything, but the things that they talk about sometimes, it'd be the kind of thing where I could see a kid playing it, and the parents rushing into the room be like, no, 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 no. Like, whoa, like that, yeah. So it does have a bit of adult content in there. That's probably why I wanted to know my age. I think it is rated mature, but yeah, there's no blood, there's no violence.
Is this co-op?
It is. So you can play it as a single player, or you can play it as 2-player. And I'm not sure how it changes as 2-player because I haven't been able to get my wife to play with me.
That's what I figured. This would be like a perfect game for. I mean,
think this would be a
couple.
really good couples game.
Yes.
When you're exploring the map, I'm not sure if you can explore separately, but if you could get things done a lot faster, like clearing maps and whatnot. However, in combat, I think you each control one character, which would make it kind of interesting because there is a lot of like, hey, have this one character to defend while the other character attacks, or trying to do your combo attacks and attack at the same time, and combination and stuff like that. So that would require communication. So I do think this would be a really good couples game.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think, looking at time, I think we'll move on to the final game of today.
All right. Yeah, makes sense.
Alright, so we will bid heaven goodbye, and I'd love to talk about Control, but I'll have to save Control for next time. So I'm going to be talking about Cyberpunk, which I finished probably about a month ago, and that really clashed with my expectations and stuff. So I'm going to warn this because I think this is the last video on Cyberpunk before I actually finish the game, I think. So if you haven't finished Cyberpunk, or you're thinking about buying it and you're afraid of spoilers or the ending, yeah, you should probably stop watching and come back or skip to the end of the podcast, probably about 6 or 7 minutes later. So I finished Cyberpunk, and again, we've talked about this 2 times as well, when I talked about expectations for the game and me starting playing it. And it's really a good game, good looking game. I didn't have any bugs or any graphical glitches. The one thing I was absolutely disappointed about is the lack of player empowerment in the game. Because in the game, as you know, Keanu Reeves gets stuck in your head as this guy. His character's name is Johnny Silverhand. And that causes like a problem because his DNA or his consciousness is overwriting you, and you're gonna die. And that affects the game, where you just feel well, it causes you to be weak and sometimes to have problems where like you're walking around and then you you stumble and you spit blood out because your body's having a hard time having two people inside your brain or your consciousness. And that sucks. And I thought, okay, as I finish the game, then afterwards I can get rid of it and just have one person and not be weak. But I mean, the way I finished the game was like I had no chance to like do anything after I finished it. It was just like, this is it, game over. I'm like, what? And then I had the option to go back to a point where I was still weak, and it sucks. It absolutely sucks. I mean, this game has so many cool zones, so many cool activities and guns. I love the guns and all the things you get to do, and there's so much stuff I didn't get to do. I finished this in 22 hours, and that was surprising as well. It's like I was expecting all this other stuff to open up, and it never did. And yeah, it's so different from The Witcher 3, which, you know, Adam played it, and then I played it, and I feel like The Witcher 3, you had power, and you had the ability to feel power. In this game, I'm like, man, you've got all this cybernetic tools and the cool guns, and you've got lots of options to be strong, but you're always hampered by the story, which is like, yes, you have two people inside your head. This is the story, and no, I don't care. I don't want it. That's why story ruined the game for me.
Now, does that impact gameplay to the point where, like, you know, you're in combat and
it never
you feel
does
weaker, or is it just story?
during combat at all, but it's this feeling where you're walking around in the forest and you're going up to a guy to talk to him, and then suddenly your character is on his or her knees and coughing blood and like, oh man, I feel weak. And even though it doesn't affect combat, it just feels weird.
Are these scripted events, or is it like random? Like, even if you're just walking around the city, it'll happen.
So as soon as you get Johnny Silverhand, Keanu Reeves in your head, there's a counter which shows how much your body has been compromised by this entity. And as it goes up, the weakness events happen more frequently.
So they can happen just randomly. Like
Yes, but it never happens in combat. But it does happen when you're walking around or you're driving a car or something like that.
Oh, okay. How at its most frequent? How frequent would you say it is?
So as it gets higher and higher, it happens in a play session. So I mean, I played an hour like I usually do. It happens two times in an hour at its most. I mean, this is towards the end of the game. 2 times in an hour.
That doesn't. I don't know. Maybe to me that doesn't sound too bad. I was thinking like, you know, once every 3 minutes or something.
No. and then the fact is, this game is like an open world game, right? That's the other complaint I had. But you always pushed along to sort of follow the story. There's no chance where it's like, okay, we're gonna stop. You can go do all the side activities and whatever the hell you want. No, it's like story, finished, goodbye.
So would you compare this to GTA, or would you say this is very different from GTA? I mean, because obviously on the surface you have this big city you can explore and kind of go anywhere you want, but would you say they're similar, or would you say they're actually quite different?
I mean, it was very strange because, I mean, every other open world game, there's story, but there's also time for you to explore the world. There was like no time. Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
I mean, if you wanted to, though, couldn't you just be like, screw it, and just drive off?
I mean, you could, but you get like reminders and stuff. Like somebody will call you, like, "Hey, V, blah blah blah. We were supposed to meet at blah 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 blah. Why aren't you here?" And it just irritates you.
Oh, okay, that was kind of the problem people had with GTA 4, right? With the cousin who's constantly calling you.
Oh God, I mean, the last GTA I played, I think I played GTA 5. And then again, it was a bit too slow for me, too much talking. I'm like, I just want to do stuff. And this also might be my thing with the game, is that there's a lot of story. And I mean, the story is like, I love the story. It's really, really good. But I want to feel empowered in games, and I've mentioned that before. And the whole experience, like going back to numbers, because that just sort of clarifies things in my head. I went in expecting, again, like an 8 or a 9. And I came out with like a 6.5 experience towards the end of the game, and I was thought like, I'm gonna play this again because I went the corporate route and there's 2 other playthroughs you can go through. And then after that, I'm like, No, literally every time you play through, you're stuck with Keanu Reeves in your head, and you're hobbled the entire freaking game. I'm like, why? Why would I want to be weak? I can play other games and get my feeling of power.
Okay. Because yeah, when you were talking to me about it, you said that you weren't getting that because you really like that power fantasy.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
And so I was thinking, it was the kind of thing where it's like, oh, I'm getting into a gunfight and it's taken me like, 20 shots to down guys. I thought it was more like that, where you feel like you're not a very powerful character, but you're talking actually like in story terms, not in terms of what you're doing in the game.
Even in, yes, I mean, I mean, your character, I mean, I did have like a cool gun towards the end of the game. Fights were not difficult, but yeah, the story ruined the player power of fantasy as a summary, yes.
What about things like you can do hacking and stuff in the game as well, right?
Yep.
How do you like that sort of thing?
Hacking was cool. A lot of people said like hacking is something you should do like all the time. I never ended up doing it. I ended up just shooting a lot of people. Yeah, Ben was saying as well, like he found the shooting hard. So I guess he did the hacking stuff. But I mean, because I play a lot of shooting games, so for me shooting is not difficult. So it was easy, but it's still, yeah. I just comparing it to every other game I've ever played, open world games, it just sucked.
You think that might be a difference between console and PC as well? Because I know some shooters work really, really well on PC and don't work well on console.
That might be a thing as well. It might just be playing with I'm with a freaking mouse and keyboard, Especially middle-aged gamers our age, we're used to the headshot stuff. It's easy for pinpoint accuracy.
Yeah, like I know the Fallout games, especially Fallout 3, playing it on PC, you can play it like any other shooter, but on a console, it was, you wanted to use VATS all the time because it was really hard to play as a shooter.
Yeah, so, I mean, summary, I would wait for this on a sale or wait for it super cheap if you then play it and enjoy the story and then never play it again, which is what I'm going to do, unless they remove that whole, if they allow you to play the game without this whole Johnny Silverhand stuff inside and just go around and do stuff, that would be wonderful. Because there were so many side quests I didn't get to do because the game was continuously prodding me to go here, do this, meet this guy, do that, do that, do that. No.
They're supposed to have DLC coming out, right?
I guess so, but I mean, like in the news, the Cyberpunk lead developer left, so it's on to someone else, and there's been stories about CD Projekt Red just sort of giving up on this, So I don't know. Patch 1.2 is out, and it's like thousands or hundreds of fixes and stuff. So I don't know what's gonna come. They say they're not gonna give up. I would imagine they probably are, just because of the reception it had. And lots of people like it was fun. I had fun. But it's not as replayable as The Witcher is, or as Just Cause 1, 2, 3, 4 is, or the GTAs. There's so many open world things that you could play multiple times. This doesn't have that replayability, I think.
That's too bad. Yeah, I heard originally they were saying that this one was supposed to have more replayability than The Witcher 3 because they were saying we're going to make it shorter, but we're going to give you a lot more options. As opposed to The Witcher 3, where maybe you had 3 options in any given situation, but it's 200 hours long. This one's going to be, we're going to give you 6 options, but it's only going to be 20 hours long. So I heard that they were going to aim for more replayability.
I could see that. I mean, maybe it's me. Maybe you're okay with the weekend stuff. If you're okay with that, there are definitely lots of impactful choices in the game, where I have seen myself making different choices and then going in a different direction, and then but just the whole weakness stuff just totally turned me off towards the end, and I'm like, no, can't do it.
Well, I'll have to wait and see, because it hasn't returned to the PlayStation Store yet, so...
Yes, that would be interesting to see at some point if you do play it, and we could come back and compare. I mean, since we have all this stuff is stored on the internet for perpetuity, we're able to compare our impressions.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we're almost that time. Are we gonna keep talking about games next week, you think, or you want to do something else, or?
We can do games again. We still got a few left.
Yeah, we've got Freefire, we've got Control. I want to talk about how much I hate the tutorial of Elite Dangerous and why it wastes people's time. And wait, what else have I been playing? I'd love to talk about the Hearthstone expansion that's out as well, and the core set and that sort of stuff. So yeah, actually, I've got 3 games right there.
All right, yeah, I've got Free Fire. I can talk a little bit about Apex as well. It's fairly similar, and yeah, I just deleted Valhalla because I just finished it. And,
Oh, nice.
yeah, and I deleted Windbound because yeah, I'm not going to be able to finish that. So then I'm going to start a new game this week, and so I'm debating whether I want to do Watam because I think that's going to be super short.
Okay.
Or if I'll do Children of Zodiac. I think I might do Children of Zodiac and then pick up Nier when that comes out, which should be in another 16 days. So
Nice.
yeah,
So you
forward
said
to that.
potentially streaming tomorrow. What are you gonna stream tomorrow?
I think I'll do Children of Zodiac tomorrow.
Okay, and Friday streaming for sure, or still up in the air?
I really hope I can, but we will have to see because the cat, he recently went for his teeth cleaning and the doctor found that he had some little fatty deposits in him.
Okay.
He had these little, I don't know, nodes in him or whatever. So the doctor cut him out, put some stitches in him, and he needs to get his stitches out on Friday.
Oh yes.
So, yeah, so we'll see if I'll try to stream if I can, and
Okay.
either take the cat after streaming or see if I can get up really early and take the cat before streaming. So we'll see. I'll try for Friday.
Okay. Very good. So, okay, that's Adam's schedule. So I'll be streaming for sure Thursday night Hearthstone, and Friday I might do some Elite Dangerous because I guess I played the wrong version according to my brothers. So that'll be Elite Dangerous Friday, and if not Elite Dangerous, I will be trying to finish Control, which according to Ben said I'm pretty much near the end. And that will be that for that week, this week, and then next week we will be here with, as Adam just said, for on his side, Free Fire, Apex, and Children of the Zodiac. Oh no, Valhalla.
Just Children of Zodiac. Oh, I can talk about Valhalla too.
I mean, up to so something
Now that
like
I
that.
finished it.
Yes. And that was so another games episode next week. Don't forget to send us some questions. I already said it before. And we just set up our own Discord as well. And at some point we will update links and that sort of stuff. So if you're interested in Discord, send us a message. And if you want to, maybe you want to join it, or you want to chat in there and you're like, oh, we can join that. I'm on Clubhouse as well. And eventually Adam and I might do a Clubhouse, something or the other, a chat about games or gaming, or integrate this stream into Clubhouse and bring that into there so you can come and stop by Clubhouse and have a chat if you're an iOS user, because Clubhouse unfortunately is still not on Android. Okay, and yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Do you want to say anything, Ed?
Yeah, contact us anywhere you want. We're Middle Age Gaming 2020 on Twitch, at Middle Age Gaming on Instagram, at Gaming Aged on Twitter, or Middle Age Gaming 2020 on Facebook, or email middleagegaming2020@gmail.com. So you can feel free to contact us at any of those places, and then you can get our Discord and you can contact us at there as well. So yeah, and send us any questions or about games that we've been playing or games that you would like us to play. I still have to play Omori. That's been requested by one of my students. Free Fire was a game that was requested by a viewer. So yeah, if there's a game that you guys want us to try out, feel free to recommend stuff, and we'll keep an open mind, give it a shot.
Sure, definitely. Okay, and thanks, and see you guys next week, Tuesday, Taiwanese time in the morning, and American time Monday night, and that will be that. Okay, bye.